Ambiguity aversion, also called uncertainty aversion, is a strategy whereby a person chooses a familiar risk over an unfamiliar one. As expressed in the classic saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. While some may see this strategy as a form of cowardice, where a person essentially chooses the path of least resistance, which it certainly can be, it's also a valuable tool for calculation that can prevent unnecessary losses and untold risks. One person who could easily have benefited from ambiguity aversion was John Hammond, the man who built the perpetual lawsuit machine that is Jurassic Park. On June 21, 1996, Jurassic Park the Ride opened at Universal Studios Hollywood. At a cost of over $100 million, at the time it was clear that the intention with this ride was to compete with Disney, with a kind of heavy metal jungle cruise, and possibly even outdo them. That was the point of this, by the way. These Mickey ears floating in the water were a direct shot at Michael Eisner and the Disney company. Eisner had been responsible in recent years for Disney's experiences becoming more like thrill rides, or more accurately, more like what his son, Breck Eisner, thought was cool. Evidently, Breck thought roller coasters were way cooler than dinosaurs, and that was fortunate for Universal, because Jurassic Park the Ride became Universal's main selling point, besides the tram tour. Unfortunately, at a certain point, those beautiful doors began opening on a somewhat decrepit scene. The Ultrasaurus at the beginning of the ride, once happy to munch on plants and look down on us for our life choices, now limped weakly to the side in a horrifically familiar tableau.
Pure shriveled and always to the left.
While the baby Ultrasaur just sat there like an idiot. The other animatronics would also suffer maintenance issues, mostly having to do with their skin falling off, but the most annoying decomposition from my point of view was the Jeep effect. For those of you who don't know, when the ride originally opened in '96, there was an effect where a Jeep would fall over the edge of a concrete precipice and slide down into the water, splashing parkgoers. Kind of like a scene in the original movie. At some point, the effect stopped working properly, and I guess Universal reasoned that it was called Jurassic Park the Ride and not Falling Jeep the Ride. So they didn't really do anything to fix it, and it just seemed to get worse and worse over time, eventually just becoming a Jeep that sat there. The T-Rex in the finale would also sometimes have problems, but honestly, with an animatronic of this size, that doesn't surprise me at all. It was my view back in 2017 that Universal should update the ride to fix the broken effects, and the obvious excuse to do this would be a retheme to Jurassic World, which had been fairly successful. I knew that the ride would lose something of the character that I loved so much, but I also knew that it was essentially rotting away in plain sight. And so it was that on September 3rd, 2018, the ride was officially closed for refurbishment. I was among the many fans at the time waiting to see what Universal would do, and when photos of an unfinished Indominus Rex animatronic surfaced online, I was begging to ride this ride. When I finally got up the hill and around the corner, I was disappointed. Warning, if you haven't been on the Jurassic World ride and don't want to be spoiled, turn back now. The first thing you'll notice is that the exotic greenery has disappeared and is now replaced with a dinosaur skeleton and the words, "When dinosaurs ruled the world." This change isn't too bad, it's just not very good, but honestly it's fine compared to what's next. The comforting sound of Richard Kiley, the actual narrator from both the film and the novel, that's right, Crichton actually mentions him by name, is torn away from us like a baby torn from its womb, and replaced with a guy that sounds like a narrator for a f***ing Travel Channel documentary.
At the top of the food chain himself, the Mosasaurus, apex predator of the deep.
At the same time, we see a pair of lame, generic metal doors. The wooden doors from the original ride and the film were iconic, giving off a King Kong vibe that made it doubly appropriate for Universal. The new doors look like the backstage area at the Waterworld show. For a second, I thought the ride had broken down and they were taking us through the evacuation route. Then the doors open, and instead of the malfunctioning Ultrasaurus, we get a big indoor area with windows looking into a Mosasaurus tank, similar to the one seen in the 2015 movie. The effect is okay, and it's pretty cool when the Mosasaurus cracks the window and water shoots out. Sometimes, though, the program being used for the ride can glitch out, and instead of the Mosasaurus, you'll see the system UI trying to boot itself back up. When an animatronic breaks, at the very least, you get a statue depicting the thing it's supposed to be, and at the best, you get a poorly functioning animatronic. When a screen-based effect breaks, any semblance of a secondary reality is shattered, as you begin to feel stupid for ever getting immersed in the first place. Another change comes as we approach what used to be called Hadrosaur Cove, with the derelict raft being removed and replaced with nothing. Seriously, it's just a wall.
Really spectacular, spared no expense.
The Compsognathus that originally fought over popcorn were placed further ahead and now fight over a hat next to a crashed gyrosphere. The derelict raft that originally contained the Dilophosaurus has once again been removed and replaced with nothing. The floating Mickey ear hat is also missing, which makes me wonder if Universal was worried Disney would suddenly complain about it after a decade. But at least the raptor enclosure is still here, thank God, with the same effect. But now we also get the cage where the Indominus Rex escaped, which is fine, it's alright. Some screens were added so we could see the stars of the film because making a Chris Pratt animatronic was apparently too expensive. This masterfully laid out theme of not giving a shit continues as we turn the corner to see that the glorious falling Jeep has finally been removed and replaced with some bent up bars. Why not replace the falling Jeep with a falling gyrosphere like the one in the sequel, Fallen Kingdom? You've got one right there. Seriously, I understand that this kind of engineering work costs a lot, but this is the business you've chosen. Finally, we get a proper update, as the two Dilophosauruses guarding the lift hill have been replaced with an actual animatronic of the head of the Indominus Rex, again from the 2015 movie. It's an impressive effect, even though it's obviously just a head. I cannot complain. Then we get more screens, the old Raptor effect, and some new nice but kind of out-of-place set dressing, followed by another Indominus Rex animatronic that replaces a previous T-Rex animatronic. We get a new animatronic of the Velociraptor Blue from the reboot movie, and finally head into the most impressive section of the ride, the Indominus Rex T-Rex fight. To be fair, it's not so much of a fight as it is a stare down, but it's still really cool. When the ride originally reopened as Jurassic World, the full-size Indominus Rex just stood there and roared, managing to turn its head to the T-Rex. But later, the Universal creatives managed to get the animatronic to actually kind of look like it's walking out. While it's not as impressive as the effect at Universal Beijing, it's still incredible to see up close. If there is one reason to ride Jurassic World, this scene is it. Now, while I could compare this situation to the Splash Mountain Tiana's Bayou Adventure situation, I haven't had a chance to ride the new Tiana ride yet, so instead, I'll compare it to the changes made to Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean. Are the Jack Sparrow animatronics alone worth riding pirates? Do they fit stylistically with the older effects, as the Indominus does with the T-Rex? How about the redhead now being a lady pirate? Is that like a big draw for people? I don't mean to be rude, even with the changes I still love pirates. The essential character of the ride remains. But honestly, there's just no comparison between this and this. The Indominus Rex animatronic is so awesome, it could easily be its own attraction, like the dragon under the castle in Disneyland Paris. But was it truly worth it? Was the update to Jurassic World a success or a failure? The inconvenient truth is, it's a mixed bag as to whether this was an improvement, but the negatives can all be summed up with two words: no yellow. You see, yellow is the brightest color in the traditional color wheel, to the point where some blind people can still detect it, which is why it's often used for emergency vehicles. Using yellow for the rafts gave the subconscious impression that danger was lurking ahead. This combination of nostalgia and pleasing aesthetics was in pretty much every aspect of the ride that was changed. Even the videos that originally played during the queue were perfectly reminiscent of the tone of the original film and fun to watch. And while some people might say, that's an old movie, that came out a long time ago, it's worth pointing out that the first Jurassic Park, to this day, retains the highest score of any of the series films on Metacritic. And when adjusted for inflation, it is still the highest grossing film of the entire series. The loss of direct aesthetic connections to the 1993 movie serves to make the attraction more just like a generic dinosaur-based theme park ride, which there are plenty of. And the new gray and blue color scheme seems almost intentionally dull. Just look at this new raft. Who wants to escape death in this? Not only do we lose so many wonderful details and callbacks, many of these features are replaced with diddly squat. Then we have the screens. My position on screens is very simple. If the screens are used organically, it's fine. That is to say, if the screen either convincingly represents something other than a screen, or it's actually supposed to be a screen, it can work. Those screens that are supposed to be screens should mostly be used only in queues and pre-shows. Otherwise, it starts to feel lazy. Jurassic World uses screens in both ways, but does it do so effectively? In the case of the Mosasaurus, it sort of depends on what day you go. I do appreciate that the Mosasaurus has both daytime and nighttime modes, so there's some immersion there at least, and the water effects are timed nicely with the animation. Overall, though I have problems with the Mosasaurus scene and would pretty much always prefer a practical animatronic, I think it's ultimately successful. The other screens, however, are so f***ing useless. I have gone on this ride multiple times since they were added, and I never look at them. I'm serious when I say that the concrete walls are of more interest to me. And you know why? Because they're really there. Hard work was put into making those. I absolutely refuse to waste even a second of my mini vacation watching a Blu-ray off of a flat screen in the middle of a $100 million above-ground pool. It's not all negative, though. The new animatronics are certainly fun, and they add some red meat, for lack of a better term. 3 appearances by the Indominus Rex is a pretty respectable number, and the third Indominus, especially now that it kind of sort of walks, is one of the most impressive animatronics I've ever seen in a ride. But I ask again, was this one animatronic, or all 3 of them, really worth it? Was I so preoccupied with whether or not they could that I never stopped to think whether they should? Unfortunately, this is a case of you broke it, you bought it. As cool as some of the new additions are, I can't help but find myself missing the original ride. Slightly different versions of the original still exist at Universal Orlando and Japan, but it's just not the same. We can never go back, or more to the point, there's no way Universal ever would. These rides just cost too much for changes not to stick, at least for years. Maybe it's actually the temporary nature of these rides that makes them so special to us. We know that they cannot possibly last forever, at least not in their current state. And this temporary aspect serves to give these experiences a greater sense of meaning for us. We were there. We saw it up close, and the experience still lives inside of us. When I heard that Jurassic Park the Ride was going to be closing for refurbishment, I headed down to Universal Studios Hollywood with my buddy, and we proceeded to ride the ride over and over again, as many times as we could stomach it. I cannot tell you how many times we rode it, because I had a new beer from the drink cart outside nearly every time I got back in line, and by the time I got off, I was 3 sheets to the wind. But I can tell you one thing. I will never forget that day. And Jurassic Park the Ride made it happen. Well, there you go. I am technically called Park Narcs, so I figure I should do something on a theme park every now and then, and I just thought of this on the fly, so figured I'd do this one. Thank you again to all the people who have subscribed and liked. I put up a poll. I don't know if, honestly, I have no idea how this works. I don't know if only subs can see this or what, but I put up a poll asking basically, is it okay if I put up these videos every other week? And the reason being that it's really difficult for me to do these things. I don't want to complain. I'm really happy that I get to do this, and I'm really happy that people are watching the videos. So I definitely don't want to complain. I'm just saying, in order to get this stuff done, I have a day job and other stuff. It might take that much time. Luckily, the majority of you were okay with that. I did notice, of course, that there were people who were not okay with that. I want you to know that I see you. I am not ignoring you. So while I'm going to go with the majority in this case, I want you to know this. I will try to get an extra video out in between now and then, especially when it's something like, if I could do a short thing, that'll be much easier. And I definitely want to get some extra stuff out for October because it's my favorite month. So hope you guys are enjoying it, and I'm going to have another one out for you soon. I am Park Narcs. Woo!